and welcome to Current Affairs for Beginners. First, let us start with the answer for the question from our yesterday's video. Which of the following statement is incorrect with regard to Sustainable Development Goals India Index? SDG Index, which was released by Niti Aayog last year. This is the first time Niti Aayog has released a Sustainable Development Goals Index. This index is released by Niti Aayog. This statement is correct. The next statement is Himachal Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala are categorized as achiever states under this index. Yes, according to this SDG index, Himachal Pradesh, Kerala and Tamil Nadu were ranked on top 3 positions and they were on track to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The next statement is all 17 goals are considered for calculating this index. This statement is incorrect because this index has considered only 13 out of 17 goals because of non-availability of data at the state level. So, as the statement C is incorrect, the answer here is C. Which of the following statements is incorrect? So, it is C. Now, let's start our today's session. Our first article is A Case for Common Sense. This article comes under GS Paper 3 under the topic of environment. From this article, we are going to see about an agreement known as Convention on Biological Diversity. Convention on Biological Diversity. Before getting into this, we should know about United Nations Environment Program and Earth Summit. What is this United Nations Environment Program? This is an organization under United Nations. The United Nations General Assembly will elect the United Nations Environment Program Governing Council members, and it is headquartered at Nairobi of Kenya. This United Nations Environment Program will have a constant surveillance on environment through a program known as Earth Watch. Based on its work, it will release a report known as Global Environment Outlook. This is the report that is being published by the United Nations Environment Program. Then, what is meant by Earth Summit? This is a conference that was held in Rio de Janeiro of Brazil in 1992. The formal name of this conference is United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. So now, what is the connection between this United Nations Environment Program and Earth Summit? In the late 1980s, the United Nations Environment Program members, they have decided we should have some sort of international agreement to protect biodiversity. It is in order to protect biodiversity. So they worked on a draft agreement, which is also known as Nairobi Conference. In 1992, when Earth Summit was held in Rio of Brazil, these United Nations Environment Program people, they had put this draft agreement on table and have requested various countries to sign this. This signed international agreement is known as Convention on Biodiversity. The official name of it is Convention on Biological Diversity. Along with this Earth Summit gave birth to two more things. With a mission to protect biodiversity, it resulted in Convention on Biodiversity Agreement. Whereas with a mission to reverse the climate change, it led to the birth of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And in order to promote sustainable development, it led to the Agenda 21. Now, here we are going to see only about this Convention on Biodiversity, Convention on Biological Diversity. First of all, what is meant by a convention, which means an international agreement? So this CBD is an international agreement on biodiversity, Convention on Biodiversity, which is the brainchild of United Nations Environment Program. This had its headquarters in Montreal of Canada and it works under UNEP. So what does this Convention on Biological Diversity wants? It wants to protect biodiversity. That led to this Conference of Parties meetings and Aichi targets. We'll see what are these. And the next thing is it wants the safe use of biotechnology, which led to the Cartagena Biosafety Protocol. And it wants to stop unfair use of genetic resources. That led to the Nagoya Genetic Resources Protocol. What are these Aichi targets? This is a strategic plan with 20 targets called as Aichi target. The objective of this is to address the underlying causes of biodiversity loss. What are the causes for loss in biodiversity? And to reduce the pressures on biodiversity, safeguard the biodiversity at all levels, and enhance the benefits provided by the biodiversity and provide for capacity building. Some of the Aichi targets include bringing down the rate of loss of natural habitats to half and committing to conserve 17% of the terrestrial and inland water areas and 10% of the marine areas and coastal areas through establishing protected areas, and to restore at least 15% of the degraded areas, and to put special effort to reduce the pressures that were faced by the coral reefs, and to substantially increase the level of financial resources in support of implementation of this convention. The next Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety was adopted in 2000, and it is a legally binding protocol as part of this Convention on Biodiversity. It is related to biosafety measures. Biosafety concerns are related to import and export of living modified organisms and commodities made from them. The next one is Nagoya Protocol. It will provide a transparent legal framework for effective implementation of the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. So now what is important from this Convention on Biological Diversity is whether it is legally binding or not. Yes, it is a legally binding agreement. And this agreement doesn't have members, but it will have parties. Parties in the sense like rich parties, middle class and poor parties on the other side. These parties, they will meet at regular intervals, and these meetings are nothing but this conference of parties. In these meetings, the leaders and delegates, they will evaluate their past achievements and lay down future course of action, money and technology transfer to the third world countries. Here, in this convention, each party will have one vote and decisions will be taken by majority vote. This CBD is considered as a landmark international law on environment because it is for the first time this has recognized the conservation of biological diversity as a common concern of humankind and an integral part of development process. It covers all the ecosystems, species and genetic resources. It links the traditional conservation efforts to the economic goal of using biological resources in a sustainable manner. It has set up the principles for the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the use of genetic resources. That is through this Nagoya Protocol, and it also covers the rapidly expanding field of biotechnology, which is addressed by the Cartagena Protocol, addressing technology development and transfer, benefit sharing and biosafety. And as this convention is legally binding, countries that join in this are obliged to implement the provisions. And what all is accepted and what does this CBD wants? Biological diversity is a common cause of humankind. So the states were having sovereign rights over their biological resources. But at the same time, the states were also having responsibility for conserving their biological diversity. Therefore, these states are required to create national biodiversity strategies and action plans for sustainable use of this biological diversity, which is important for food security, health and other needs of the public. So as per this convention, the rich members who are the developed countries, will give money and technology to the middle class and poor members, who are the developing and least developed countries. And the special attention will be provided to the least developed countries and small island states because they are more vulnerable, and special attention will also be provided to the developing nations, especially with arid and semi-arid zones, coastal and mountainous areas. And this convention will provide public awareness, sensitization, knowledge sharing and other diplomatic legal requirements. Now try to answer this question. Which of the following is incorrectly matched? Nagoya, genetic resources, Cartagena Protocol, sustainable development, Aichi targets, biodiversity. Answer this question and post your answers in the comment box. Tomorrow we'll see a detailed explanation for this question. The next article is AMU issue referred to the Constitution bench. This article comes under GS paper 2 under the topic of polity. From this article, we are going to see what are the constitutional provisions regarding these minority educational institutions. Here we can see the issue regarding this AMU seeking for minority status. This Article 30 of the Indian Constitution recognizes the linguistic and religious minorities, but not those based on race, ethnicity. It recognizes only linguistic and religious minorities. It recognizes the right of religious and linguistic minorities to establish and administer the educational institutions by recognizing the role these educational institutions play in preserving the distinct cultures. A majority community can also establish and administer these educational institutions, but they will not enjoy special rights under Article 30. The special rights that were enjoyed by religious minority institutions are under Article 30 Clause 1 Clause A. These minority educational institutions will enjoy right to education as a fundamental right. In case the property is taken over by the state, due compensation will be provided to establish this educational institution somewhere else. And Article 15 Clause 5, as per this article, these minority educational institutions are not considered for reservation, whereas under Right to Education Act, these minority educational institutions were not required to provide admission to the children in the age group of 6 to 14 years up to 25% of enrollment reserved for economically backward section of the society. And in 1992, the Supreme Court has ruled that these institutions, they can have 50% of their seats reserved for minorities. And in 2002, the Supreme Court has ruled that they can have a separate admission process which is fair, transparent and merit based, and they can also have a separate fee structure, but they shouldn't charge capitation fee. Now, what will be the benefits that the AMU can avail if it retains the minority status? They will have freedom to reserve seats for Muslims. For example, the AMU can reserve 50% of their seats for Muslims, and they'll get freedom to not to implement this reservation policy, that is giving 50% reservation to SC or ST and OBC. And also their land can only be acquired by the government after paying compensation. The next article is the shape of the job crisis. This article comes under GS paper 1 under the topic of population and also under GS paper 2 under the topic of governance. From here, we are going to see about a scheme known as MUDRA Yojana, Micro Units Development and Refinancing Agency Limited. What is this MUDRA? The core objective of this MUDRA bank is to fund the unfunded. It will finance to the last mile financiers who were financing the small or micro businesses. The lending priority by these MUDRA will be given to the SC or ST enterprises under this MUDRA Yojana. And this scheme is being administered by the Ministry of Finance. So as per this scheme, a MUDRA bank was set up as a statutory body. This bank will regulate and refinance all the microfinance institutions. These institutions are the ones who will lend to MSME, that is engaged in small manufacturing, trade or services. And this will partner all the state or regional level coordinators to provide easy finance to even the remote investors. This bank has classified the borrowers into 3 segments, that is the starters, the mid-stage finance seekers and the next level growth seekers. And they were addressed through 3 instruments. The first one, the starters will be provided with Shishu loans. These loans will cover up to 50,000 rupees, whereas these middle stage finance seekers will be provided loan under Kishore instrument. This Kishore will cover loans above 50,000 and up to 5 lakh rupees, whereas the other one is Tarun, the instrument that provides loans above 5 lakh rupees and up to 10 lakh rupees. This MUDRA bank will provide a loan at lower rates to the small entrepreneurs. And this bank has been allotted with a refinance fund of 20,000 crores from the shortfalls of priority sector lending. The next article is cholesterol lowering interventions whether diet or statins should start early. This article comes under GS paper 3 under the topic of science and technology and its role in health. So from this article here we are going to see about a protein known as PCSK9. This PCSK9 protein will help in lowering the cholesterol levels and it will reduce the risk of heart attacks. These are a new class of injectable drugs that will reduce this bad cholesterol levels by up to 60% when combined with a statin, which is another class of drugs that were prescribed to help lower these cholesterol levels. The discovery of these cholesterol lowering mutations in a human gene called as PCSK9, it led to the development of most promising new drugs against heart diseases along with these statins. Now try to answer this question. What is PCSK9 recently seen in news? Is it a gene editing technology? Is it a drug to inhibit cholesterol level? A communication satellite? Or a social bonding hormone? Try to answer this question and tomorrow we'll see answer for this. So try to answer those questions and post your answers in the comment box. Tomorrow we'll see their explanation. Thank you.